Swagger! You guys have been wanting more Bleach, so by golly, you're gonna get it. Just remember to show me and the channel what you guys are feeling by giving that like and subscribe button your biggest Getsuga Tensho, and leave your thoughts down in the comments. With that being said, we are starting our first series on the channel. In it, we're going to tour the Bleach timeline and explore the different aspects of Ichigo's powers as they appear in the story, starting with the Agent of the Soul Reaper and Soul Society arc, the Arrancar and Hueco Mundo arcs, Fate Karakura Town arc, the Lost Agent arc, and finally the 1000-Year Blood War arc. So, assuming we stick to that model, this is going to be a 5-episode series. Today, we're taking a look at the Substitute Soul Reaper and Soul Society arcs and what we learn about the basics of Ichigo's Shinigami abilities. Jumping right into the Agent of the Soul Reaper arc, we are introduced to the idea that Ichigo is a being with above-average spiritual power. When Rukia goes to give Ichigo her powers in the very first episode, we learn that she only intended to give him half, and he basically took all of it. She also notes that his Zanpakuto, even in its sealed basic state, is massively oversized.
This is Phil from the Small Wiener Club. From what I'm looking at, your wiener is massive. I mean, the sheer girth.
Later on in the arc, during his hollow killing contest with Uryu, Ichigo manages to block a Seto from a Menos Grande. Now, up to this point, Uryu had been chiding Ichigo for not being able to control his spiritual pressure and constantly leaking it out in a clumsy fashion. But it's in this moment that Uryu realizes, even though Ichigo can't control his spiritual pressure and is constantly leaking it out, he just always has enough. It's almost like a faucet that's always on full blast, but it never runs out. However, by the end of this arc, when Ichigo gets clapped by Byakuya and Renji, we learn that his current state is not the result of his own inherent powers, but his borrowed powers from Rukia. This is why, despite its overblown size, Ichigo's sword was so easily cut down by both Byakuya and Urahara. Speaking of Urahara, it's during his training with Ichigo that he discovers his own latent Shinigami powers buried deep down in his soul, and we see his hollow mask for the very first time. But we'll talk about that later. Not only that, but he finally learns the name of his Zanpakuto, Zangetsu, and releases its Shikai state, taking the form of a massive, full-tang Kyber knife. Now, armed with his own Shinigami powers and Zangetsu, we're ready for the Soul Society arc. During this arc, we learn for the first and seemingly only time since it's never brought up again, that Zangetsu is a full-time release type Zanpakuto, meaning that once it's in its released or Shikai state, it just kind of stays like that. At first, we are led to believe that this is due to Ichigo's inability to control his spiritual energy, but throughout the entire series, as Ichigo does learn to control his energy more, we never see him put Zangetsu back into a sealed form. This leads me to believe that either Ichigo just has too much spiritual energy to seal away, or Zangetsu is just the type of Zanpakuto that's always loud and proud. Now, it's here that I want to take a second to discuss Ichigo's signature move, the Getsuga Tensho, or Heaven Piercer. And I can already hear y'all in the comments talking about some...
Actually, Sean, the literal Japanese translation is Moonfang Heaven Piercer. I thought you would know that.
Yes, I know. Getsuga Tensho literally translates to Moonfang Heaven Piercer. I'm using the simplified translation from the anime, fight me. But rather than describe it myself, I'll let Ichigo explain what it is.
When I swing my sword, all of my spiritual pressure is absorbed by my Zanpakuto. Then it gets released again in a super high density beam. That gives it an incredibly amplified swing. That's Zangetsu's power.
Okay, so essentially Getsuga Tensho focuses and weaponizes Ichigo's overflowing spiritual pressure. That being said, it always struck me as kind of odd that Ichigo's only special ability is just a standard energy blast, especially compared to Bleach's very unique array of hacks and abilities. I don't know, just looking at the other Zanpakuto and their special abilities in Bleach, it always struck me as weird that Ichigo of all people would have something so standard. However, the more I think about what we learn later on regarding Ichigo's power set and origins, the more I believe it makes perfect sense. Stay tuned to find out what I mean. For now, the series has established that Ichigo is a monster when it comes to energy reserves and output, so an attack that throws all of it at his enemy as a condensed beam fits pretty well. Moving on to Ichigo's Bankai, Tensa Zangetsu, there's a couple of interesting things to note here. First, it's very interesting to me that in appearance, Ichigo's Bankai looks very similar to Old Man Zangetsu himself, himself. Remember, Bankai is drawing out and subjugating your Zanpakuto spirit. So, given what we learn later about the true nature of Ichigo's powers and his Zanpakuto, it's fascinating that his current Bankai would look identical to Old Man Zangetsu's outfit. Second, Ichigo's Bankai is a clad type, meaning he wears his powers around him rather than it just changing his sword or creating a huge effect. For example, compare Tenta Zangetsu to Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi. Byakuya's Zanpakuto creates this massive effect, but it doesn't change him at all. Ichigo's Bankai is specifically one that changes his appearance, and he wears his power. As I said back in my top 5 Bankai video, go check that out if you haven't yet. This fits the theme of condensing and focusing Ichigo's immense raw power perfectly, very similar to the Getsuga Tensho. The last thing we learn about Ichigo's powers in this arc is the brief appearance of his inner hollow, White. Remember the mask thing from before? Yeah, we in here now. During his battle with Kenpachi, we meet White Ichigo for the first time, and he is a menace. It seemed as though he understood Ichigo's powers better than Ichigo did. Keep that in mind for later. Here, during his battle with Byakuya, we see him take over Ichigo's body for the first time as Ichigo is about to die, and immediately, we again get the sense that he understands Ichigo's powers much better, being able to deduce exactly why Ichigo was slowing down, and make far better use of his speed and power. He even goes so far as to use a new form of Getsuga Tensho that Byakuya calls the Black Getsuga.
What do you mean by that?
But Ichigo eventually manages to take his mask off and finish his battle with Byakuya. Well guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you're as excited for the rest of this series as I am, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comments so I know you guys are vibing with the content and want more of it. So, if you're ready, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.